Hello, I'm Joshua McConnellogue and I'm here today with SDLP member Mark Durkan. How's it going, Mark?
Alright, Joshua.
Mark, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, do you think the backstop should be upheld?
Absolutely. We have been defenders of the backstop from the start. Ideally, we wouldn't have wanted there to be any Brexit, and we were official members of the campaign to remain in the SDLP. So we've always been proudly pro-European and seen the huge benefits that that's brought, not just to Europe, but particularly to us here in Ireland. Northern Ireland's been a huge beneficiary of membership of the European Union. In terms of Brexit and in terms of the backstop, I cannot envisage, well, sadly now I can envisage, but we certainly don't want to even countenance the prospect of the return of a border, a hard border here between north and south. The implications for trade are absolutely dire. The implications for people's every day-to-day life are also huge. We've so many people working here in the city, people from the city who now live just over the border, be it in Muff, Bridgend or Calais, and their just day-to-day life is potentially going to be turned upside down. So these are sort of the practical implications. There's also the huge, and I believe it is a huge risk to the peace process that would be posed by the installation of a hard border here on this island.
Well, as someone who's has a job across the border since I've been age 18, a part-time job, and a lot of my friends and family would also work cross-border, do you think parties that are more directly involved in the Brexit negotiations should be more mindful of the situation that they might put people like me and my friends and my family in if there is a return of a hard border?
Yeah, and with a lot of the focus of the media, and there has been quite a bit of focus of late on the implications for businesses, the implications for trade, the implications for the economy across the island of a hard border. It's always been our view that not enough attention, and there hasn't been enough of an amplification of the impact that it is going to have on everyday people's everyday lives. That was one of the beautiful things about, I don't know if you're aware of the Derry Girls Against Brexit, or Against Borders, sorry, a campaign that was run by a group of local women here from Derry very successfully last year. They managed a big petition, gather stories from mostly girls, although it wasn't exclusively, from Derry, from Donegal, outlining, I suppose, how a border will impact on them, and it can be someone travelling up and down for work. Like you say, it can be as simple as someone who likes to take their dog down to Donegal for a walk on the beach every day. All these things are potentially going to be, well, if not jeopardised or put at risk altogether, it's going to become a lot less seamless potentially, and that's something that a lot of people will have to consider if we do arrive there, and I suppose their future planning for where they might set up home. Might they have to up sticks and move back into the north, and that's a lot of stress for normal folk who aren't getting a lot of clarity on the issue. So there's so much doubt and uncertainty, people aren't able to make those decisions that are vital to them and their families.
What do you think it might mean for like the communities, for example, Muff or Calais, where I know personally I have a part-time job in a petrol station. I know how much money's brought to the community and to the village by people from Derry just coming over and buying petrol. What do you think the return of a hard border would mean for those communities?
You know, I'd be one of the people that go to Muff for my diesel. And funny enough, I actually worked for a few years down in Bridgend, and the taxi go down there when it was the only filling station, sort of just over the border. At that stage it was the second busiest filling station in Europe. Believe it or not, there's a huge price difference. The price difference at the moment isn't huge, but still people will see value in going over the border. Diesel is one example, but people go down for leisure as well. There's some nice cafes and restaurants in Muff, in Buncrana, and in Calais, and when that becomes less convenient for people to do, they'll stop doing it, basically. There's also, you know, we're talking there about money not going in. There is the fact that so many people have moved out of Derry. Those villages along the border, in the Donegal side of the border, have effectively become suburbs of Derry. And if people start leaving them and coming back into the north because they think they're better off doing so, then that could have a potentially devastating economic impact on those villages in Donegal. Conversely, if people start to say, no, I'd actually be better basing myself in the Republic, you might see more people heading there. But it's just because of that lack of certainty about what's going to happen. Like, Brexit means Brexit, but still a couple of years on, nobody knows what that bloody means. But people aren't able to invest for the future, and that's just ordinary people. Then, of course, businesses are holding off on investment, expanding their businesses, employing new people, because they don't know what the implications are going to be for them.
Worst case scenario, there is a hard border and it's extremely difficult to travel up and down. What sort of, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but what do you think should be put in place to make sure that these communities like Muff and Calais aren't completely destroyed?
I know what shouldn't be put in place,
yeah.
and that is a hard border. I mean, when we focused on the impact on those villages, it's also potentially a devastating impact on the economy here in Derry City itself, where I'm a representative, because so many people come from Donegal to shop here, to eat out here, and maybe they go to the forum or whatever, even to participate in sports and things like that. You know, that really is a worst case scenario, because it would undoubtedly impact adversely on both sides, whereas I believe potentially there is a solution to Brexit that will be advantageous to both sides, and that's basically in the backstop, where Northern Ireland would get kind of the best of both worlds, and I think that rather than seen as a barrier between the EU and the UK, Northern Ireland has the potential to be a bridge between the EU and the UK, and I think that there hasn't really been any focus on the potential advantages that could come from such a situation, because we've all been really hung up on the obvious disadvantages of the hard border.
Talking about the the obvious disadvantages of a hard border, do you think a return of a hard border would definitely mean a return of violence in Ireland?
Well, it hasn't gone away, you know. Sadly, there are still some groups out there who are still pursuing the path of the violence due to some warped ideology that they think that this might bring us closer to United Ireland, when history shows us, not too distant, history shows us that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's important that the people who are still perpetrating violence, and we've sadly seen some examples of it in the city here recently, it's important that they get that message, you know, and I think we can get the message from people going on the news and condemning their actions and, you know, belittling them and slagging them off. However, I do think that there needs to be negotiation with these people, or at least listen to them and you know, try and persuade them that what they're doing is completely counterproductive. The installation of a hard border will give succour to these groups. It will enable them to say, oh look, you know, we've tried 20, oh sure, other parties tried peace for 20 years and look where it's got us. We've gone backwards, and the border itself will become a physical target for attacks as well. There's also the huge increase that you would inevitably see in illicit cross-border trade and smuggling with the installation of a hard border, because it's impossible to put a hard border right through every field and lane that traverses the border between north and south, and you know, that would also be exploited by paramilitary organisations to fuel their violent activity.
Obviously, from what you're saying, you know, you would feel that the National Republicans would pose a threat to peace here by saying that. Do you think that a lot of their members, especially their younger members, maybe who didn't love during the heart of the Troubles, are looking at it and maybe it's romanticised to them. They haven't experienced it and they might think, well, you know, I only have my say in this too.
Well, it is romanticised, and I mean, there are a lot of people out there who feel that, well, peace hasn't done anything for them. I mean, we do have, or have had a relative period of peace for 20 years. It hasn't been matched in any way by any growth and prosperity, and people feel kind of left behind. They've seen some people do well out of the peace. They see community jobs being given hand over fist to people affiliated with a certain political party, but they don't see that they or their communities have actually gotten any peace dividend. If you look at the economic figures for this region in the northwest in particular, in terms of employment, economic inactivity, low attainment in education, people do feel left behind, and whenever there is that sort of discontent, there are always people there wanting to exploit it, like these dissident groups, and they'll suck people in. And a lot of what went on during the Troubles is romanticised now. People sometimes look back through rose-tinted glasses a wee bit, and whenever you see parties still commemorating and celebrating some of the most heinous acts that were perpetrated during the Troubles. So they're doing that one week, but then the next they're condemning another group for engaging in violence or holding a view contrary to their own. That kind of hypocrisy as well, you know, is tapped into by these dissident groups.
What party would this be? So you're talking about?
Oh, no, well, I think it's easy enough to say it's Sinn Fein.
Yeah.
You know, how they can commemorate people who were involved in some absolute atrocities. You know, they do that one week and talk about the heroism of people who murdered, in many cases, innocent people, and then a couple of days later they're out condemning violence and you know, without, I think, properly trying to reach out to those who haven't seen the light in terms of moving away from violence, that they're getting and sort of crushing them, I think, as opposed to convincing them that it's the wrong way to go.